begin in about a p.m. and I call this budget meeting to order. We have 9 members present today, and that constitutes a quorum to conduct today's budget hearing. To introduce the members of the committee, we have sitting on my far left is Representative Selena Babauta. She's the chair for JGO. To her right, Representative Edwin Probst, chair for gaming, and Representative Christina Sablan, chair for health and welfare. Joining me in the days is Vice Chair Representative Karina Magofna, and I am the chair, Donald Magnolia. And to my far right, we have Representative Richard Lezama, chair for PUTC. To the left, Representative Joel Camacho, representing Precinct 4. Representative Vicente Camacho, chair for Federal and Foreign Affairs, and Representative Danita Yangtamai, chair for Commerce and Tourism and Cannabis. Assisting the committee, we have our Senior Legislative Assistant, Claire Sablan, our Legal Counsel, Brandon Lade, our Fiscal Analyst, Thomas Robigo, and our IT, Jonathan Diaz, and Sergeant at Arms Pete Tuai. Also joining us and representing Precinct 6, Representative Patrick St. Nicholas. All right, good afternoon, members. With that, can I get a motion for the adoption of today's agenda? All right, motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We now move on to the public portion of today's agenda. If there's any member in the audience that would like to provide any comments in regards to the 2 entities that are listed in the agenda, the floor is now open. And it looks like there's none. So we move on to the next item, which is the opening statement. Today's agenda was supposed to include DFEMS. However, they've submitted a request to reschedule their budget hearing, and so they are scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. And so before us, we have the NMI Judicial branch. They submitted a budget request of $16.2 million for the upcoming fiscal year 2023. And of the amount that they've requested, approximately 9.7 will be allocated for personnel, which includes 158 positions. In addition, 5.7 million was requested to provide for their operations and 714,000 for their utility expenses. As the members made, based on the governor's submission under the general fund, he proposes 6,112,000, which computes a shortfall of just over 10 million. And so we have the CNMI Judicial branch before us, and they've requested to provide a presentation to the members. And so at this time, I would like to hand over the floor to anyone from the judicial branch and proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Dongkuluna Sizu Sumasi, Chairman and Representative Manglonya, Donald Manglonya, Vice Chair of the Committee, Rep Magofnya, Jantodui Pumaluna members in House, colleagues, staff, ladies and gentlemen. Dongkuluna Sizu Sumasi for giving the Judiciary, our third branch of government, the opportunity to come before you to justify its 2023 budget submission, as chairman indicated, in the amount of 15,247,312. This request is not only for the Supreme Court, it covers the Superior Court, the Family Court, the Drug Court, Mental Health Court, the Probation Office, Court Administration, and the Law Revision Commission. It also covers the Tinian and Rota monthly court calendar and the water and power payments in those islands and the necessary office supplies. In a nutshell, we went through typhoons, pandemic, downturn in our economy, but we are still alive today. It is therefore, I believe, fitting and proper at this time to extend a Sendongkuluna Sizu Sumasi to the legislative branch, the executive branch, for their support to the court in the past. Our system of government requires all the three branches of government to work together so that the needs of our people can be addressed fully. I am happy to say that in spite of the turbulent times, Speaker Villagomez, President Hofsnyder, Governor Torres, Lieutenant Governor Palacios have extended their helping hands to the judiciary to make sure that the doors of justice on Rota, Tinian, and Saipan is opened. Through the assistance of the two branches of our government, the third branch of government was able to address our HVAC and pandemic issues. As I sit here this afternoon, one of the things that I can clearly recall was sitting in my chambers debating back then when there was a downturn in our economy, whether I am going to close the door of the courthouse on Rotantinian in order to survive on the Office and Planning and Budget submission that I have only this amount of money to operate the courts of the Commonwealth. And as I remember, that amount of money was enough to buy toilet tissues for my court on Saipan, nothing more. I think all of us remember that time. But thank God the CARES Act and ARPA funds kicked in, and we are able to bring back employees that were temporarily laid off, and also the court was able to implement a reasonable salary adjustments to our hardworking employees. The million dollar question today is, and they are number one, what have the courts done or accomplished to help our people? Question two, where does the judiciary stands today so that the legislature can properly allocate our resources? And three, where is the judiciary heading as we continue to navigate our commonwealth into the uncharted waters of tomorrow? With that, I now respectfully call my learned colleague, Justin Pamangalonia. Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and the Vice Chairman, and all the members of the committee. Thank you very much for having us this afternoon. Once again, we're here to discuss the judiciary's budget requests for the upcoming fiscal year. In past budget hearings, although the Chief Justice has mentioned our request in the past, the judiciary would almost immediately start talking about funding needs, advocating for our underpaid staff, emphasizing an independent judiciary, pointing to indigent litigants that need representation, of course, under our Constitution, and so on. Our introductory statements mainly, although those CJ did mention something that is, again, about our past, but I will try to take it in from a different angle this afternoon because with ARPA funding, which the judiciary received last summer in 2021, that funding has really put in a breath of life to the judiciary. So today it is my pleasure to talk about accomplishments since that time, since summer 2021. From court technology to personnel development, the past 12 months have seen us initiate exciting projects that once would seem just impossible for the judiciary. I served as the chair of the ARPA leadership team, which was organized even before President Biden inked that legislation back in March 2021. And this position has given me a broad overview of our various initiatives and a sense of how all fit together in our mission to improve the third branch of government. So, following my introduction, Justice Enos will discuss an exciting project that all of you here in the legislature and the executive branch help us with. And after Justice Enos makes his statements, Presiding Judge Naraha will talk about mental health court docket and the accomplishment there in the initial year. And then Judge Kim Tenorio will take us through drug court and the court's accomplishments there. So the question that CJ posed is, what has the judiciary done with the ARPA funds of $13.1 million? Because frankly, that is a lot of money for 1 year, well, maybe 2 or 3 years because of the life of ARPA. Our spending plan under ARPA breaks that amount into two common categories that I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with in this budget process. personnel and all others. We have allocated $4.6 million for personnel. That's a big chunk. And $8.6 million to all others. And I wish to discuss achievements related to the all others portion with an emphasis on improvements to our technology systems. We've been spending a lot of time on technology at the courthouse. So a major goal is to transform the courtrooms in Central Justicia in Rhoda, Cotintidian, and the Guma Justicia into hybrid spaces that can accommodate both traditional and virtual hearings. This technology project includes the replacement of outdated audio system. And believe me, when I first walked into the room, I looked at the audio system here and the monitors, and we got something to share with you here. So this project that we're undertaking includes the replacement of outdated audio system. It will have centrally controlled immersive system capable of individual volume adjustments and assistive learning equipment. We will also add a video system with multiple screens and cameras capable of virtual and live streaming. You probably have seen the Johnny Depp hearings, something more advanced than that. Okay. Our planned evidence presentation system will allow digital display of exhibits during hearings and trials, and most especially jury trials. So we have a nice display up there of how the courtroom will look like probably in the next year. In addition, plans are underway to build a data center. The center will house high-value equipment that contains data essential to court operations. In the event of fires or floodings or emergencies, the center will protect equipment and data, mitigating losses and closures. And just recently, we added a redundancy in fiber cable connections to the Guma Justicia. And that just happened about 2 weeks ago, as shown in the monitors here. And this project will be followed by a replacement of our 25-year-old cables, the network cables within the Guma Justicia. It will boost reliable internet access, something that is vital in an era of increasing virtual hearings and meetings. Cotintinian and Central Justicia have fiber cables in place, and they're just waiting for equipment, monitors, and audio system in the courtrooms in the two islands and the staff offices. So that is the technology part. All the 9 courtrooms in the 3 islands will have updated technology in the next 12 months by our estimate. And now we move into another accomplishment, and that is our direction to e-court. This is an incredible new area for our files and court operations. We will commit ARPA funds to upgrading to a cloud database for case and document management, enabling all of us to meet the demands of the public and our petitioners. And I'm thankful that the bar rep is here, Sean Frank. And in the future, community members on all 3 islands will be able to access files, receive notifications on their cell phones, print complaints, and declaratory judgments that we've all been hearing about recently, the moment these documents are filed. And our next accomplishment, I really want to relay this to you. We embarked on a monumental document scanning project. ARPA funds allowed us to put together a team of scanning clerks stationed in Central Justicia. They're all there in the monitors from Tinian, as you can see. And they're stationed in Guma Justicia, Cotintinian. In just 6 months, this remarkable teams on all three islands scanned over 300,000 documents and audited over 320,000 documents. We got rid of our metal filing cabinets. We gave them to other government agencies because of the remarkable feat of these scanners in the three islands. This massive undertaking in just 6 months brings our court records up to speed with modern technology and enables the public to access files with a speed not previously possible. And as we meet this afternoon, this team is still scanning at their post using ARPA scanners and ARPA paid time. So what else did we spend our ARPA funding? Well, capital improvements. We have accomplishments in facilities. We have been able to undertake major improvements to court facilities. We will soon be renovating all restrooms in the Gumalsticia to install sensors and replace damaged toilets and urinals and upgrade the pipeworks within the concrete walls. All these are because of ARPA and, of course, public health. We are currently also in the process of repainting court buildings on all three islands. And I heard that the members of this Ways and Means Committee visited Rhoda, the Central Anesthesia, with its freshly new paint. And in the coming months, Cotintinian will also receive a coat of paint, including the Gumalsticia. ARPA spending has focused not only on these major improvements to technology and physical facilities, but also on our most valuable resource, our people. And the staff and managers are in back of us here, and there is our entire judiciary team at our professional development conference as shown on the monitor. These are our valuable resources, and we thank this committee, the executive branch, for making it possible to fund our people in the past fiscal years. We are very proud of our staff. Funding, of course, is a vital component of personnel expenses, allowing us to attract and retain our talented staff, our talented managers, and our talented directors here. Our 30 current positions, including the scanning clerks in the three islands, the IT specialists with a lot of work because of the technology that we're planning for, the deputy marshals are fully funded by ARPA. Dozens of other positions, including probation officers, deputy clerks of court, receive partial funding. We are fortunate to have a group of capable staffers, many of whom donning several hats to make all these achievements that I just briefly mentioned possible for the judiciary and the Commonwealth. And as I mentioned in past years, the judiciary has been fiscally strained, gasping for air at every turn. ARPA has truly been a breath of life, enabling us to accomplish the monumental feats that I have just mentioned. So these are what we're spending ARPA on, and we will be spending more in the next 2 to 3 years. So we welcome the questions later on, and we will provide all the details. Our staff, our managers are ready to answer all the details. But before we get into that, I would like to turn over the floor, if possible, to Justice Enos so that he can tell us about another accomplishment that is being achieved by ARPA. So, Justice Enos.
Thank you,
you so
Justice
much.
Manglonia. Chairman Manglonia and the honorable members of this committee, thank you for having us this afternoon. I would like to say and start my presentation by saying that in about 3 to 4 months from today, anyone, anywhere on this planet, you'll be able to electronically file your land documents, UCCs 1, 2, and 3, all those security agreements from the banks, or even individual liens with the recorder's office. You can do that electronically. And I have this body to thank for allowing the court to do that and moving forward in meeting our strategic plan in digitizing practically all physical documents at the courthouse, including those in the custody of the Commonwealth Recorder's Office. As you know, Public Law 21-39 repealed the old Recorders Act. There are two major changes, basically. One is that it shifted the supervision of that office from the presiding judge of the Superior Court to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And secondly, and most important of all, is that it allowed the judiciary to accept electronic recordation of all land documents and all documents that's required under the law to be recorded in the recorder's office. Now, we have the ARPA funds to thank for that. And I think it's quite an accomplishment to know that in about practically 90 days, everyone would be able to electronically record their document. As you know, the way that we record documents now, you physically have to go down to the recorder's office, line up, present your document to the Commonwealth Recorder, and that's Kelsey Audon, who's in the gallery today, with her assistant. You get a slip that says, go to the cashier and pay this much, and then come back. You go to the cashier, you pay, get a receipt, go back to the recorder's office, and that's when your document gets recorded. That is not going to be the way that's going to be done in 3 months from now. So we have a contract. The court has contracted with Trimin System, an electronic recording document in the U.S. jurisdiction, in U.S. jurisdictions all over, and they've this Trimin company has subcontracted Turnkey, a local company out of the Commonwealth, to do a support for electronic recordation. The contract is practically for 2 years for licensing and support. And the testing date, like I said, would be about 3 to 4 months together with the live date. So that is the accomplishment of the recorder's office in a nutshell. Thank you. And now I would recognize PJ to make his presentation on mental health court.
Thank you, Justice. Your honors, members of the legislature, and chairman of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to meet today and discuss the fiscal year 2023 budget. The Superior Court was able to accomplish a lot since we last came before you. I will focus on the technology, specialty courts, and universal mental health concerns. On technology, first, Rhoda Tinian were able to receive much needed internet bandwidth upgrades, largely thanks to ARPA funds. This is a start to ensuring that all of our islands retain access to justice. Second, while the judiciary is successfully back in the Guma Justicia, COVID continued on. The Superior Court continued to adapt and provide virtual hearings. Most recently, the Superior Court worked with the Department of Correction to provide arraignments with the accused appearing virtually from DOC custody. Lastly, the Superior Court will be upgrading all courtrooms with the latest technology. All of this thanks to Chief Justice Castro, Justice Mangloni, and Justice Innos. Specialty courts. The Superior Court implemented the Mental Health Court docket program on July 3, 2021. Modeled after the drug court, the program provides participants with severe mental illness or intellectual and developmental disability with assistance to treatment and services. The program had a slow start but continues to assist its participants. Just recently, the mental health court manager in Ms. Yoon Jung-soo, who's present here today, started on May 31, 2022, and the clinical liaison, Ms. Mia Jones, started on May 23, 2022. Currently, there are 3 participants in the program with 2 pending referrals. The mental health court team works hard to ensure the participant makes progress. However, treatment has been a big hurdle, and the Superior Court plans to address this with the Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation and the executive branch with the hopes of building a residential treatment facility in the community. The court envisions a residential treatment facility as a holistic approach to behavioral health. This means it would address both substance use disorder and severe mental illness. Universal mental health concern. Mental health is a universal concern. Believe it or not, the judiciary is part of the healing process and wellness. Thus, the court would like to address mental health in other areas like juvenile courts, veterans, and Office of Adult Probation. I put together a juvenile justice working group to address the youth in the criminal justice system, how the court can best address their mental health needs, and how to best reform the juvenile justice system. According to an April 6, 2022 National Center for State Court report, upwards of 70% of young people in the justice system has a diagnosed mental disorder, and 90% have experienced a traumatic life event that can negatively impact their mental health. Currently, there are 8 youth that are suspected to have mental health concern and 16 youth that need to be ruled out. Unlike adults, the juvenile court system has various vendors to assist with juvenile mental health treatment. This is concerning, and I have already began cross-training the mental health court program personnel to assist with juvenile concerns. My hope is that by next fiscal year, the court will have significant strides in addressing juvenile justice system. The court also has begun looking into veteran court. Veterans put their life on the line for us to be the home of the free. When they continue into contact with the court, we should help them. Most recently, the court has received a large grant from U.S. Congress to research the viability of Veterans Court. I look forward to what the research and ultimately what the report will say. Further, the Superior Court has begun to look at the tail end of the criminal justice system when defendants are on probation. The focus nationally has shifted to rehabilitating and integrating defendants back into society. I have begun the overhaul with a new chief probation officer in Ms. Matilde Bermudez Rosa. With Ms. Rosa as the new chief, the Office of Adult Probation started to find new ways to reintegrate probationers back into society. Most recently, the Office of Adult Probation Services met with the NMI Tech to see if probationers can avail of classes. This is the first step of many to getting our probationers back on track to becoming contributing members, community members. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I look forward to any question you may have. Your Honor, Judge Kim Tenorio.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the Ways and Means Committee. I will not make opening remarks, but I'm here today prepared to answer questions regarding the Superior Court and in general, and more specifically, Drug Court and Family Court. And I'll pass it on to our Director of Courts.
Thank you, Your Honors. And good afternoon, honorable members of the Committee on Ways and Means. Thank you again for the opportunity to come before you today and to discuss the Judiciary's budget proposal. In addition to the members of the bench present with us, we have staff members from our leadership team who are here to assist with any questions you may have during your deliberations concerning our services and our different departments. They are Clerk of the Superior Court, Patrick V. Diaz, Family Court Manager Kiana Sablan, Drug Court Manager Edward Diaz, Mental Health Court Manager Daniel Su, Chief Probation Officer Matilde Bermudez Rasa, Special Assistant to the Presiding Judge Rochelle Vasquez, Treatment Courts Coordinator Brian Bocago, our Budget and Finance Director John Villagomez, our Chief Marshal Jason T. Tarkong, Building Superintendent Jean Weaver, Grants Administrator Jim Stoll, Human Resources and Administrative Officer Michelle Guerrero, Commonwealth Recorder Kelsey Aldan, Acting Procurement Officer and ARPA Administrator Martha Standish, and our General Counsel Hyun Jae Lee, and our LRC Executive Director Dean Palacios. In February of this year, the Judicial Council approved the Judiciary's fiscal year 2023 budget proposal of, as the CJ stated earlier, $15,247,312. And on March 2nd, the Judiciary submitted the same proposal to this body. This covers personnel costs at $8.8 million and operations at a little bit under $6.3 million, and the 1% public auditor's fee. $4 million of this amount represents the anticipated cost of building a new courthouse on Tinian near the proposed Civic Center on 42nd Street and Broadway. While cognizant of the impact of our request, we are respectfully informing this honorable body of the Judiciary's needs for our people on Rhoda, Saipan, and Tinian. The request, listed through 6 local accounts, covers costs for the 8 chambers, 15 departments, and 1 commission office, and is premised on our mission and vision as a branch, on national and evidence-based standards for trial and appellate courts case management, and on national trends to move towards a more evidence-based, rehabilitative approach to justice with more treatment courts. And it's based also on the implementation of hybrid services post-COVID-19. Also on maintaining workforce wellness and merit-based and competitive compensation plan for our staff. And finally, it is based on performance-based administrative programs that support judicial services and equal access. The proposal considers our 7 goals in our strategic plan. They are for fair and timely case resolution, ensure all parties have access to justice, programs like ADR, LAP, language access, indigent defense programs. The third goal is addressing pressing needs through non-adversarial models, court efficiency through advanced technology, maintaining a professional workforce, pursuing connection with the community, and to finally, goal number 7, provide a robust judiciary. Please help us with charting our combined successes forward for our Commonwealth. We highlight some areas of priorities that are currently underfunded and respectfully request for your consideration for funding. Professional services, indigent defense, jury fees, justices and judges pro tems, interpreters. Those are items under professional services that are currently underfunded. We have been able to pay for those through ARPA funds, but that will not continue. Utilities. We have 4 buildings across our different islands that are populated and have courthouse there. The current proposal from the administration provides for $100,000 for this cost. We requested for over $700,000. Our monthly cost now for the Guma Justicia is approximately $57,000. Our monthly cost for Rhoda is approximately $4,000, and our monthly cost for Tinian is approximately $1,500. We do not know how the fuel prices will affect our kilowatt hours, but those are just numbers for your consideration. Travel, that has been an unfunded line item in the administration's proposal. For the judiciary's proposal, we requested for funds that allows for court access, equal access by our people in the Commonwealth to all 3 islands. We must have our justices and judges provide those judicial services to our islands on Rhoda and Tinian. Travel is thus necessary and must be funded. Cleaning services, we are in a green zone, I think. That's our local standard now for determining what is the fear or the, I guess, the level of proprietary cleaning and everything, right, for COVID. But we are not completely out of COVID-19 and the different variants. And so cleaning services also has to be an item that has to be funded, and we request for your consideration for that as well. And for our full-time employee positions, please consider our request for our salary increases for appropriate positions that are very competitive and hard to fill, and also to compensate our existing employees who have really worked their best and provide the best of service to the people who come before us as a judiciary. And now I would like to ask Mr. Sean Frank, who is here representing the CNMI Bar Association, for their comments.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think I know most of you. My name's Sean Frank. I'm a private attorney. I've been in the CNMI for almost 30 years now, private practicing. I'm here as the Bar Association's vice president to talk to you a little bit about the importance of funding indigent defense. I grew up in the mainland, of course, and I think like everybody else my age in the 70s, the first thing you did when you walked into class at any public school in the United States was roll. The teacher took roll, and then everybody stood up and raised your right hand and looked at the flag, and you said, "I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." So I'm here to talk to you about the "and justice for all" part of that. We have a relatively well-funded Attorney General's office and a well-funded police force protecting us. And we have the courts ensuring that justice is carried out in a fair and complete manner. And we have a public defender's office that's actually pretty excellent. It's a good office. It's small, but very effective. But the problem is that for the bar, at least how the private bar is involved, is that when you have a case involving multiple defendants, like a burglary or something like that, typically where you've got multiple defendants, the public defender can only represent one of them, okay? Or if the public defender has represented a witness in another case before and can't represent the defendant in a case. So what happens then is they bring in conflicts counsel. The court appoints private counsel to come in and provide the defense. And we've got a robust private defense bar. I think in the federal courts, it's a similar system. It's a little better funded with training. And I've repeatedly heard from the federal judges there that we've got an effective group of attorneys providing this defense. And the problem, as I understand it, and I'll let the court speak to the actual numbers, is that it just seems every year when we get to a point where there's a potential fiscal crunch, one of the main budget items they look at for cutting is, can we cut indigent defense? And I'd submit to you that if it's cut, and if it's cut in a manner that affects the ability to defend these folks, it's not a cost-effective move. What you end up with is counsel not doing as effective a job, harder to find folks to take cases because they know they're not going to get paid for a long time if they get paid. And you end up with an uneven system of justice. And I think it's fair to say we're living in this community, and the scourge that we've felt here over the last few years with methamphetamine, that it's all been driven home that any of our families could have members that get in trouble in the criminal justice system. And what would you want for your family member if they did, and they're facing the considerable resources of the Attorney General's office and the Department of Public Safety? You'd want them to have a good attorney that's dedicated to helping them get a just result. And I just ask that when you're looking at that issue of continuing to fund indigent defense, that you keep that in mind, that if it isn't justice for all, we're not living up to our promises to the people. And that's really something we need to make sure we maintain as part of our budget. And I'm happy to ask like everybody else here, happy to answer any questions anybody's got. Thank you.
Thank you, justices and judges and managers and directors and everyone that is here today. I just want to express our appreciation to your team for even going as far as explaining to the committee how your ARPA funds have been spent. And that's the one thing that was lacking this entire budget season, is how did each agency use their ARPA funds to, better provide services to the people. And so with that, I'll just start off with some of the questions that we have on the ARPA that was allocated to the judiciary. I saw in your presentation that you've indicated a ARPA allocation for several fiscal years. Of that amount, how much have you set aside for the next fiscal year, if there's any left?
We have in our ARPA leadership team, as introduced by Director Camacho, I would like to have Martha Standish, Mandela Standish, answer these. She has all the details, and we have all the graphics prepared so that we can answer you in much detail. Ms. Standish? The question is, if I understand it correctly, have we reserved funds for personnel? And the general answer is yes. And we can show you how much was spent in fiscal year 2021, the current fiscal year, and the next 2 fiscal years. Is Martha here?
Here. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So for personnel, the judiciary has submitted a spending plan to the Department of Finance in the amount of $4.6 million. For fiscal year 2021, we have expended $170,000 in personnel. And currently for fiscal year 2022, we've expended $815,561. And our total year-to-date expenses for personnel is just under $1,986,000. We do have funding for the rest of fiscal year 2022, 2023, and 2024. About $1.4 million for fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 2024.
And if I may add, our scanning team will still be in our workforce, and the deputy marshals, some probation officers, and our IT personnel for the next 2 to 3 years.
Sorry, I'm trying to see how you came up, how this how does all of this add up to the 13 million? So you've mentioned about 1.4 for 23 and 24 in total, operations and personnel?
No, in personnel, total of 4.6 million, and in operations, 8.5 million.
But for fiscal year 23, 1.4 is set aside for both personnel and operations?
No, just for personnel.
Just personnel. And what about for operations?
For operations, it's just a lump sum. So out of the 8.5, we've already expended 2 million. So we have about 6 million left for the remainder of fiscal year 2022, 2023, and 2024.
And how much of the 6.5 million remaining do you anticipate on spending for the rest of fiscal year 2022?
For 2022, actually, all the funds are spoken for. We have projects that we either already have completed or we're announcing to complete, and then future projects that we anticipate to complete. So actually, all the funds are spoken for. But for fiscal year 2023 and 2024, if I were to break it down, probably 5 million for fiscal year 2023 and 2024.
If we can just flash the spending plan, revised spending plan number 3, so that the committee can see it.
While they are looking for that, Mr. Chairman, if I may add on the personnel side, for this fiscal year, there are certain percentages covered under ARPA for those positions that are under the local accounts. We don't anticipate any of that happening for FY 2023 and onward. So the positions that are going to be funded under ARPA, under the remaining funds that Ms. Standish just mentioned, those are temporary positions that are outside of the count of the budget. So what are those examples? Like what Justice Manglonia mentioned, the ARPA scanning clerks. We also have the ARPA administrator who's fully funded by ARPA. Then we have the administrative officers who assist us with the procurement and the handling of the purchases and the report writing under the Department of Treasury guidelines. And so with respect to personnel and whether any of those percentages will go towards the FTE that are existing now, the 127 NOPs under our current budget, as well as the 150 that are in what's being requested, we don't anticipate any of those to be funded under ARPA, and that's why we're requesting for funding for those FTEs. The remaining balance for ARPA under operations is not necessarily broken down per fiscal year because it's based on how our procurement process runs through. And so earlier, Justice Manglonia mentioned that one of our major projects is the data center. And that is something that we don't know what that number will be. And so the remaining funds will determine whether or not it'll go towards that cost or not.
The data center is still under A&E considerations. We will have more details. This will be, we're envisioning at least 1,500 square feet of space. And within this space will allow for about 5-6 IT personnel. And there will be, this is like a box as you can see there, it's a box within a box. The inner box of this data center will contain all our servers and very sensitive equipment. We are going to store, hundreds, maybe millions of documents electronically. We want to make sure that this area is protected. All our equipment is protected in this area. So what is the cost? We don't know. Is it $400 a square feet? $600 a square feet? Given the state of construction, we don't know. We're waiting for A&E. But because we have invested a lot into technology, we will invest in how to protect this technology. And ARPA is going to make it possible. The other area, you mentioned $6 million operations, we are trying to decide whether we can have an extension of the Gumasticia to house. I've spoken with the two justices here just initially last week, whether we should add a behavioral health annex. And what is this behavioral health annex? It will, because we've been having a difficult time with USDA. This annex will house, and BJ, this may come as a surprise to you, but it will house drug court, it will house mental health court, and probation office. So it's still in the planning stage. How much are we going to spend on this? Probably 3,000 square foot building, $2-3 million. So we have really been studying the remainder of our ARPA funds, and we will accomplish these goals within the next 2 to 3 years, just as we had accomplished the SSZ. And you're all familiar with our screening and security area there. We accomplished that under CARES in less than 6 months. We built that extension in less than 6 months. And our ARPA leadership team, the Judiciary team, we are ready again to build a behavioral health annex to house the treatment courts, because it's a different direction the court is taking. It's a whole different ballgame in treating the litigants and the parties that need assistance with mental health. So we'll be making decisions in the next month or two on where to proceed, where to spend the remaining $2-3 million. So does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Going back to Ms. Sonia, the FTE that you mentioned, the additional 31, I'm sorry, you said that's not, those positions will not be funded under ARPA, and so this would be your request through the general fund?
We have some positions. So when we received our local budget, we had some positions available through our 127 total FTEs. Some of those were funded under ARPA. And so because in the next year or two they may not be, we're requesting for them to be funded now.
Do you have that figure of how much to transition those individuals into the
Yes.
general fund?
It is. I don't have that figure per division, but we can provide it to you. It's
Total.
outlined in our budget request on the subsequent pages.
And to date, are all employees up to where they should be in regards to pay increase and WGI and all of that?
Yes, we are waiting for, well, yes, and possibly. Yes, because we have submitted everything that needs to be submitted, but we are waiting for 2 WGI processing to occur on 2 of our remaining. We only have less than 6. We have 4 total civil service employees, and we're waiting for 2 of their WGIs to get processed. Unlike our other documents, though, the civil service employees, we have to process through the executive branch, and so that takes a little longer than what we typically use.
Mr. Chairman, did I understand your question correctly? Are our employees paid at the level that we want them paid?
Have they been processed?
Huh?
He's asking if they've been processed.
Okay, sorry, I have a hard of hearing.
Well, we have a proposal as to where they should be.
But if-
But
That's
if
something that can
that
be
is your question, or that will be your next
No.
question, the answer is an outright no.
No.
Okay. So noted, thank you. How's the judiciary with its payables?
We have the,
And this would include any professional services that you've mentioned that you would have to pay lawyers and all these pro tem.
We're pretty up to date with when we receive invoices, we process them and try and get them out as soon as possible. As for professional services, they go through a longer review process. So we do receive them and we're ready to pay them. But as long as they get approved by the right people, and then it should be processed right away.
but maybe the director can touch on a high payable amount, and that involves the HVAC, because that is still glaring with us.
So there are some payables that we have seen significant delays with, and the factors that are associated with the delays are two things. One is they are accounts that are held by us. So if the accounts are with us, then we have an internal, we have a procurement process, we have our own procurement rules, and we have our own check system that we can issue payments from. If it's not from within our branch, then we obviously are tied to timelines outside of our branch. The second significant sort of cause for the delay is our transition from JDE to Munis. Like any other change, when you start something new, there is that transition period. And so we have been with that process. However, given that it's only 6 months into the fiscal year, and with the startup of, I think Munis's launch date on procurement was October 1 of this year, things have gotten better. Part of our discussion with respect to Munis and the delays associated with it is our workflow, who gets to authorize what. And I think in the beginning, there was some discussions going back and forth on how we are a separate branch and how we have our own procurement regulations, and how the workflow should only include the judicial officers that are in that workflow. That has been worked out. Now, as to the first cause of delay, which is accounts that are not controlled by us, an example of that is the HVAC account. That is the $7 million that was initially provided by you, the legislature, to address the mold remediation and the replacement of the air conditioning systems at Guma, which went down in 2018. We have since completed that project. We do have some outstanding amounts that remain pending. Luckily for us, our vendors have been very understanding, but we continue to keep open communication lines with the Secretary of Finance and make sure that the vendors are kept abreast of why the payments have not been made. But that in and of itself are accounts that are not within our control. And so we certify the invoices that the work has been done, and then we continue to follow up based on when the payments will be issued.
So the thing, how much of it is due and owing, because you asked for the payable? I believe, John, it's about in excess of $700,000.
Yes, that's.
For each
Yes, so we've been in contact with the Department of Finance at least weekly, because the vendors are calling us. I don't think Munis should be blamed for that. We want that paid as soon as possible, because we moved into the building, or it was turned over to us, the HVAC system and the complete project back in November 9, 2021. So that's almost 6-7 months ago. So we want that, to, even though it's not the judiciary that's owing that, it's the other, the administration. We are the recipient of the HVAC and the mold remediation project.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I ask this because we have Secretary coming in tomorrow, and so these are some of the things that we can also follow up on our end. I have two more, and then I'll open the floor to the members. We anticipate a revised budget submission by July 1st. Has the Judiciary been in contact with the administration in regards to getting additional ARPA funds aside from what has already been awarded? Anyone?
I can answer that. The Judiciary, with respect to ARPA, has submitted several spending plans, but the first one that we submitted requested for an amount over $20-some million. We received $13 million. One of our biggest cost item under our current budget request is for the courthouse on Tinian. That was one of our bigger projects that we requested for under ARPA. Upon receiving the $13 million and looking at the Department of Treasury guidelines that came in, we came up with this spending plan based on what is our priority and what are the responses to COVID, and what the DOT guidelines require. The request continues. It remains in place for the remaining amounts. But have we had any discussions concerning additional funds? Yes, we are looking into procuring e-courts, and we have sought funds to complete that project because that's a case management system that our end of life on the current one occurred last year in June. And so the request continues, it's in place. Have we heard from them recently? No, not as of yet. We are aware informally that there may be an amendment coming in July, but we don't have anything formally. And our discussions have been between the Office of Management and Budget and ourselves.
All right. Thank you for that. At this time, I open the floor to the members. I recognize Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome again, everyone. Just so that we can clarify, so the judiciary requested for 20 million, and out of that, you received 13 million in ARPA funds, correct?
Maybe I'll defer to our ARPA administrator who has a better timeline of the amounts requested and when.
Yeah, we have a timeline. We can also put that on the screen.
While we're waiting,
There it is.
in March of 2021, our initial request was $24.1 million for ARPA. And then a month later, we revised that and requested $27 million, taking into consideration our plan to build the Cotintinian. Out of that second revised ARPA, we were given $13.1 million in June of 2021 with
Okay,
the final subgrant award letter in December of 2021.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I was trying to look at the big picture. So
Yes.
initially, you had requested a total of 27 million, and out of that, you received 13.1 million thus far.
That is correct.
And then you had already spent 7 million out of the 13.1, so that leaves you with a remaining 6 million as of.
I wouldn't say spent. I think it's encumbered through our
okay,
spending plan or through our
encumbered.
procurement processes.
Okay, and so with that 6 million, I believe 5 million of that was budgeted to be spent in fiscal year 23 and 24, correct? Is it just for personnel, or does that include operations?
Well, personnel was projected to be expended since last year.
Got it.
So 1.5 was budgeted for last year. That's how some of our FTEs were covered. And then this year was an additional 1.5. And then I think the remainder of the 4 million will be for next year.
Okay.
If I may add, Ms. Vice Chair,
Mhm.
so we have our judiciary budget here. So for personnel, we allocated, as I mentioned, 4.6.
Mhm.
So in 2021 is $170,000, and 2022
Oh.
is $815,000, leaving a balance of $3.6 million, which has already been allocated for the next 2 to 3 years
Got it.
with our current staffing. And so as far as expenditures or encumbrance for operations, last fiscal year, we spent $458,000. This current fiscal year so far, we have spent $2.6 million, leaving, $1.8 million, leaving 6.3 for the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so that was the breakdown. Okay.
So as I mentioned previously, we are waiting for A&E for the different projects. And then we will have to make adjustments from one account to the other of what these areas will, what this $6 billion will be going into. But for example, we have an RFP going out for the different court technologies projects. We don't know how much that will be. But we are planning to spend about $100 to $125,000 per courtroom in technology. Ideally, each courtroom should be able to get $150,000 of technology just to be up to par with the national courtroom tech.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So if I'm understanding this correct and I'm following the thought process, it sounds like the ARPA funds that that you are planning to spend is primarily for project related and not so much on operations per se, like your actual operations, correct?
We are going for capital improvements and court technology because as the past fiscal year's budget for the judiciary, they're indicative that we are not going to get technology. The expensive part of the technology is actually the software. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to go the cloud system because we can't buy the servers to house all of these hundreds of thousands of documents. And most of the companies out there, they're going cloud-based.
Right.
And they charge quite pricey annual fees. So we're preparing for that. We're all emails. We have 100-some staff members. Each one of them, we have to pay for their emails, things like that, and they do add up. But we're planning for 3 to 5 years of license fees, if that is possible. Quite pricey. It's just amazing.
So I'm trying to clarify because if the understanding is that the ARPA funds that you guys have received is for capital projects, as we look at the governor's submission, the ARPA funds was zero funded. And so I wanted to see how that would impact your operations, your actual operations, and not all these capital improvements, but your actual operations. I understand that we're anticipating to receive a revised budget come July 1st, but we wanted to know what those impacts may be should those be zero funded by ARPA funds. So I wanted to make the distinction between the ARPA funds that you have right now and how it's to be spent and the actual ARPA budget for your operations. So
I'm going to jump in. So we don't anticipate ARPA funds to continue for us next year, obviously based on what the governor's current submission reflects. It did not provide for the 20% for our employees. And so we're grateful that it captured 100% for salaries. However, we do have ARPA employees who may come up for expiration. Our anticipation is to keep them till 2024. But right now, it really will depend on our capital improvement projects. What the procurement process reveals is the final number for them. But moving forward on our all others, the items that I enumerated earlier, indigent defense, fees for jurors, fees for attorneys who come in and help in the defense of persons where matters are charged against them, whether in criminal or traffic or in family court. Interpreter fees. Those professional services for the courts are not your standard professional services. In fact, they are prevalently for that. If you look on the screen, this year alone, 6 months into the fiscal year, that's the number, 96,000. And so that's why we're asking for a significant amount for next fiscal year. Part of the reason is during COVID, you saw some of these jury trials and bench trials move, and now you're starting to see cases come back on. And in addition to that, we're seeing some of the growth, especially in family court docket, and we're seeing the appointments of counsel come a little bit more faster than usual. So we anticipate this to grow. Utilities, that's an operational cost that ARPA cannot cover, but we will definitely need because we're back at Guma Justicia and we have 2 other courthouses on Rhoda and Tinian, and we have our probation annex right behind the Guma Justicia. And then the issue of cleaning services, we do not want for our government agencies to be the cause of COVID transmission. And because we are all recipients of COVID funding, it's our responsibility to make sure that we keep our sanitization efforts a little bit above what is normally expected. And so that's another item that was underfunded, and so that's another area that will be impacted. I also want to note that if the committee at any time in its deliberations needs to know where we're at on our ARPA funding and our projects and what significant efforts we have made, or perhaps even delays, we invite you to go to our website. We provide monthly reports to the Secretary of Finance, and we post those reports to our website, and it would have the significant numbers that I think can help guide you with what we're spending on.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just add to the utilities topic. Okay. The administration submission for utilities or proposal is $100,000 for the judiciary for all 4 facilities. What does that mean, $100,000? Well, it means that we can operate, we can have our doors open for about 2.5 months, given the rate of our utility bills these days. And as the director mentioned, I don't know what it will. I mean, I understand that it's 30 some cents now per kilowatt hour. We 2.5 months and we'll shut down in the next fiscal year. I don't think that should happen, but that's the reality of a $100,000 budget. Actually, I'm surprised because it keeps going down, our utilities budget over the years, while now we're seeing an escalation of per kilowatt price. So, of course, we don't want that to happen, but please, the committee, take a look at that and try to increase that. Last year, our budget was $200,000 for utilities, but right now we're in arrears, and I don't think it's our own making. It's the lack of adequate fiscal decisions for the past 2 or 3 years. I think that we are now about at least $400,000 in arrears to CUC. We don't want that to exist in the records. Why? Because we handle cases on arrears and delinquency, etc. So
Thank you for the additional information and clarification. I yield.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Going back to the data center and the annex, you're proposing to construct, or at least with the annex, and then the proposed data center. Do you have the projected cost for running those two?
we have 2 options for the annex, and we're talking with our consultant. One is to right now, our IT department is underneath some piping, water pipes, and air conditioning ducting. That is not the way to house an IT or servers. And sometimes they leak, so we try to cover them and do some palliative solutions. So we're looking at that option of trying to fortify that area and build and extend it out and buy a box like a vault. So, but it's a large vault. You're talking about 15 by 15 foot vault, so that we can store our equipment in there. The second option is to extend it to the Marianas High School site. But that would involve, of course, foundational work and maybe not the best use of space for that, since we only need at least 1,500 square foot area for the data center. But this data center, although option 1 will still be within the judiciary, we're trying to build it so that it can be somewhat of independent from the rest. It would have its own fire alarm and fire sprinkler system, independent of the entire building. It would have its own air conditioning system, and it's basically a bunker. How much is that bunker?
No,
I don't know.
What about the annex? You're proposing to
The
build an
annex,
annex.
okay.
What would be
If we take a look at the ARPA, the federal legislation, the words behavioral health is written all over. So we are trying to lift to that expectation, no? Because mental illness, I guess, is the prevalent theme in the federal court. So initially, we're trying to locate where this drug court, mental health court should be at. Should we build another building in the back of Gumosticia near the DPS? Should we relocate the Supreme Court in our administrative area and build an annex? Or should the annex be just dedicated to behavioral health? So that's what we are consulting with the A&E folks. And right now we are doing a space assessment. How much of an area, a square footage, does drug court need? How much of a square footage does mental health, probation, and the related divisions need? So it's in the process. I will probably make that decision in the next month or two. But I think it's possible that we can build this facility in about a year or 18 months. So we're looking at the end of 2023. Does that answer your question? You're trying to come up with the
Somewhat.
numbers?
I'm trying to figure out how much, how much will you become,
Okay.
how much you will be asking for in future
Oh, to run it.
to maintain the annex if it gets built.
Yeah, well, that's kind of hard to predict. If you're asking me how much will it cost to run the air conditioning system for a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot annex, I don't know.
Right, but in terms of staffing, in terms of
Staffing,
equipment and all of
it's all there, 100 and some employees, but of course, some of them will be, with the presiding judge has already hired some for mental health and drug court, so we're just going to move them over. Yeah. There's not enough space, and I think PJ, your staff are all over the Gumosticia, no, in 3 or 4 different parts, so they need to be together. Yeah.
I just want to add that the Guma Justicia did not foresee treatment courts. And so drug court, family court, mental health courts, those are an afterthought for the space allocation for staff. And so that's why you see us sort of retrofitting different office spaces for these treatment courts. But it is the national trend, and it is it's evidence-based. And so we're going to see numbers coming in that the CNMI needs these courts in place. In fact, we're already seeing it. Yeah.
Thank you. So clarified. Any other member? Recognize Rep. Mavalta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to the Judiciary, to your house chamber. I'm very impressed with the presentations given so far. I'm getting this feeling that the budget that was given to the Judiciary in particular is well used and well managed, or that's the impression we get today, or I get today. And I'm so glad that you guys have improved the technology within the Judiciary to meet the demands of the 21st century and beyond. So kudos to your management team for the fiscal responsibility implemented with scarce financial resources. We do these budget hearings every year, and every year each department begs and pleads for funds, and we have to make the tough decision of allocating these funds. So it's not an easy job, and I'm glad that the Judiciary was very responsible with their financial allocations that they were given. I don't envy the task of your scanning clerks, whoever they are. That they did a remarkable job. So kudos to them as well. One of my questions is, has the Judiciary experienced in this fiscal year, at least I know we went through this last budget season, has the Judiciary experienced any delays in transfer of funds from the executive, from the Department of Finance in particular? Aside from the payments to the vendors for the HVAC system?
Relatively, when we request for funds from the to the Secretary of Finance, it usually takes about a week or two before we can release a check that we've already processed and ready for payment. So
So far this fiscal year, at least, it's a little bit more
yeah,
efficient than
yes,
last year.
with I've seen with Munis it's made the process a lot easier with finance on that.
I'm glad to hear that, because here at the legislature, we still have problems with munis. And also the municipalities, from what we've heard.
Congressman, Munis is really working out for the judiciary, partly because we require our staff to, when they check it in the morning or even at night, get into Munis and process all those procurement. Before Munis, we implemented an in-house system for procurement. If you get a PR, that PR has to leave your desk in an hour or so. It has to be processed before the end of the business day or the following day. And if you submitted the PR yourself, then call. So, but Munis, that has made life easier for us. Now it's just the, what is that, John, the replenishment? No? But all the documents are ready. If you have a travel request, that it should be out. If you don't receive that in the next day or two, call. So.
Interesting. Okay. Good to know. How much do you anticipate spending for these software licenses in the next 2 to 3 years in order to sustain your system, current system? You mentioned that was a pretty high price tag, so it'd be interesting to find out what the annual cost would be in the next 2 to 3 years.
Because of the need to expand ARPA funding, I'll give you one or two examples. Our project for e-recording, that cost us $149,000. So we paid $105,000 2 weeks ago, and the remainder at the completion of the project. We're trying to pay all these accounts. The other one is we have what's called Laserfish. We pay about $10,000 annually. We try to pay them in advance, 2-3 years, whatever is allowed under procurement and by the company. As far as website, the prices there are not too expensive, but we try to pay them in advance using ARPA funds and within procurement bounds. The big item here will be e-courts. I think that can only be paid 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
All our others, LexisNexis, that's our research engine. We try to pay them 2 to 3 years in advance.
Okay. In the current fiscal year, FY 2022, how many vacancies are currently on your books? FTEs.
Do you have the slide for that?
Let me jump in while John is looking for his. So out of 127 local FTEs, we have 32 that are vacant, 26 were unfunded. So the vacancies that were funded, there's 6 that are vacant right now and are being announced. We just filled our most recent filling of vacancy was our mental health court manager. Sometimes it's hard to fill these positions, and we've had to re-announce them several times. But the 6 vacancies that are funded, out of the 32, 1 is with the Clerk of Court's office, 2 are with the Law Revision Commission, 1 is with the Office of Adult Probation, and 2 are with the Mental Health Court docket.
Thank you. And then can we go back to that slide from FY 2022? You have current total number 127 FTEs, and then you are proposing how many in FY 2023? I don't see that number here. Do you have that number? How many are proposed for?
The total for all accounts is 159 FTEs. And
That's
we,
your current ask, 159.
our current ask under our current budget submission is 159. And we'd like to restate what the presiding judge requested last year on behalf of the entire judiciary. And that was to provide us the FTE, hopefully funded, but in the event your deliberations brings otherwise, that we continue to hold on to those FTEs.
The 159, even though
Yes.
unfunded.
Yes.
How do you expect to fund those?
Well,
ARPA supplements, maybe?
Well, the original, the 127 now, several of them, a good percentage of them are funded through ARPA.
13.
Yes, and there's two that are supplemented through a
Mhm.
JAC grant.
Okay.
And so if you allow us the FTEs, obviously our ultimate ask is to please fund all of them because they are necessary. Based on what we've premised our review on, they are necessary for us to function as a judiciary. However, if government revenues pose a challenge moving forward, we ask that you still allow the FTE count.
Okay, good to know. Final question. If we were to approve your budget request, or if we were to approve a budget for the judiciary today, which we can't, what is the top 3 on your wish list for the judiciary? Anybody can answer that.
Well, the current budget figure, and just strictly speaking numbers, based on revenues, the judiciary now receives 6% of the total budget. We'd like to respectfully request that that number be increased. We do see growth in our dockets. We are seeing a prevailing need for new treatment courts. And our staff are some of the lowest paid nationally across jurisdictions, especially for state courts. It has been quite a challenge to keep our staff. We are somewhat the training ground, I think, sometimes for continuing government employment. And that's okay because the government benefits as a whole. But of course, our greatest resource is our staff. Please don't let us lose them. Please allow additional FTEs to help them with their workloads so that they are not challenged with wearing multiple hats and doing the work of an 18-hour workday in 8. We have several employees who do still work outside of regular work hours, but they continue to come in with a smile and an eagerness on behalf of Team Judiciary. And so that's our wish list. They top that. And then you have our access to justice programs, the indigents. As you heard our bar representative, that's a very important task that all of us, it is all of our responsibilities to provide justice for all. We historically have ended up with it as a branch. We don't know how that happened, but it is with us and we want to deal with it responsibly. And then, of course, to keep our centers, our judicial centers safe. COVID has not gone away. And so we'd like to keep it safe and keep them opened. Utilities, travel so that access to the other islands and judicial services are afforded. We can go on and on and on. It would be unfair for us to limit to 3 because justice is not about the prevailing numbers. It's about providing when you can't. So I hope that answers your question, and I hope I didn't speak out of line with my bosses here.
Sure, I got the top 3, so it'd be personnel, access to justice programs, and basically capital improvements, I think is what I heard or understood.
Yes, and if I can just expand on personnel,
Sure.
Congresswoman, in family court, that we've seen a 25% rise in our cases there. We have the family court manager and another person there. That's it for the entire CNMI. And you can probably hear from Judge Katie in a little bit how that impacts the docket. She doesn't have any space on her calendar to entertain new filings, new hearings until December, Your Honor. And that's where the additional staff comes in handy. Commonwealth Recorder's Office. We have one employee there, our Commonwealth Recorder. She's our locally funded employee. The second one is an ARPA-funded employee. We're asking that that position be made local for our local people, our people who are rooted here and live here. And so because there's a shortage of staff there, they close at 12 noon so that they can entertain the appointments in the afternoon and spend time with pro se parties who need help and navigation assistance to these documents that sometimes are very legalistic for them. Our marshals. Every other jurisdiction has a marshal assigned to the security of members of the bench and the jurors. But for the judiciary, sometimes you have courtrooms that don't have coverage because we don't have enough for all three islands. And I know that you understand that concern because you have sergeants at arm here. And we would like for that ties into our request for personnel assistance. Salaries for some of those that are existing, they have carried their salaries. I have marshals who have been paid $22,000 a year to put their lives at risk for people in the courtroom, for families who are confrontational in the courtrooms, and for the protection of our bench members and our jurors. I can go on and on and on, but that ties to our personnel issues.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have for now. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
I recognize Rep. Lizama.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome to your chamber. Very well presentation. You got a whole group of professionals back there. I applaud them. My concern is, and you just mentioned it, wage increase, of course, hasn't been done in a long time, and you have people still working at $22,000. My God, that's lower than a private E1 will go into the military. You know, so that was one of my questions, but you answered it already. So you don't have any furloughs anymore? And have you recovered all the furloughs back, and or anyone decide not to come back because they're thinking they're not going to be a long term again? Do you still have furloughs, or you got everybody back?
Thank you for that question. We luckily for us, we were able to get everybody back because of ARPA. Yeah, and so our personnel regulations allow us to provide callbacks, and I think the maximum term is 2 years, and we've exercised that clause in our personnel rules to call back as many as we can. Some came back into the old positions that they held before the furlough. Others came back to other positions that we announced, but because they have primary selection over the public list, they came back through those terms. But thank you.
Data center, that is a good new program that you're working on, and I believe you're using the ARPA. You mentioned that you've been using the ARPA money. If I ask you now, because we ask others about the ARPA spendings, if we ask you for the list, the itemized expense, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to provide and show that the money was spent properly.
Yes, as the director said, we have monthly reports. They're very detailed reports. If you take a look at, for instance, March and April reports, they are about 30 to 40 pages summary, but attached to it is about at least 1,500, 2,000 pages for each month. So everything is accounted for, timesheets, all the other projects, what we purchased. Every single item of what we purchase is attached to the monthly report. If you go to our website, you see the April report. The May report will be issued either today or tomorrow, and it's only June 7th, right? But we have the May report I haven't reviewed it because of this, but once I review it, it will be posted hopefully tomorrow if I review it tonight. So this May report, Martha, do you have the number of exhibits? I would say probably 1,500 of pages.
That sounds accurate.
And there's a popular phrase in the judiciary, and that is make these reports audit ready. Okay, so whoever the accountant is, whether federal or state MI auditor, they're going to be so pleased because they don't even, I think they won't need to contact us because they're available. And that goes also to, and these are also in our annual reports. Our annual reports are up to date. We are working now on the 2022 annual report. So I hope that answers your question.
That answered my question, and I hope that everybody will be doing the same. And that's a very good accountability. As far as the data center, I've seen in the States, you are going to secure them and at the same time safeguard them, and having them away from the building, that would really help. So I just want to applaud you for that. Thank you all, professionals. Are you back?
All right, any other members? Recognized Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for sharing with us your top 3 wish list. But as you know, I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I'm really trying to be realistic about the financial resources that are scarce to us. So realistically, what would you consider your top 3 most critical and essential expenditures to just keep the courts open and function as a and just provide the services that you guys provide. As you know, the governor submitted an estimated of $103 million in projected revenues, and out of that, 25% is already going to PSS. So that only leaves $75 million for us to allocate amongst all the agencies across the government. And so realistically, we want to know what your most critical and essential needs are, so that when we come to that deliberation, that we try our best to provide you with the necessary funds just to stay afloat. Obviously, we have the ARPA funds in place, right? But in reality, we have no say in how ARPA funds are allocated, or how the governor wishes to allocate those funds to the different governments. So what we have control over is the local revenue, and like as I said, that leaves us with $75 million to work with all the different agencies. So I hear personnel, and I absolutely agree with you. And so what would the other 2 be?
At this point, I will defer to our members of the bench before I answer.
I do apologize. I don't mean to put you guys on the spot. I just want to make sure that we take into account, what your needs are. And as Judge Manglonia had mentioned, $100,000 in budget for utilities is really, just 2.5 months of utilities. How is that logical and reasonable?
I can answer your question about the top 3, but first of all, in addition to the top 3, leaving personnel and our requested salary increases for our amazing staff, I can say, please help us erase the debts on our utilities. That's $400,000, and we can expect anything over $100,000 that's proposed. That's going to add to our arrears. That's one of the items. But if we put that aside, I can ask again for elevators. We have damaged elevators in the Gumostisha. We are fortunate that we applied to USDA, and they're willing to finance or give us a grant for one elevator at about 230 some thousand, if I'm not mistaken. But we have the elevators for the Sallyport area. So that's another area that I can ask for operations. It goes on and on. Maintenance. we have an energy efficient HVAC system. How much is that to be maintained annually? And by the way, I might add that we are also looking for ways to decrease our operations. We have an energy efficient air conditioning system. We are saving about 40,000 kilowatts per month based on this new system. And so we have the stats ready for you, the slides of how many kilowatts. So those are the areas that we're cutting off. It's hard to give you the top three, but is it elevator? Is it pay the arrears? Is it? But we do understand that other government agencies have their own urgent needs, CAC, PSS, and with the meager resources that we have, at some level, there has to be some compromise this fiscal year and well into next fiscal year. So, but I do know that you have to decide for us is should this 15 million go down to 14, 13, and hopefully not less than 10.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
I was
Well-
going over the budget sheet, and I thought what you have before you are our top three requests already.
I think also, please bear in mind that, our role, yes, we maintain buildings and we have staff, but in the end, it's to make sure that we dispense justice and provide equal access while doing so. And so, again, going back to our indigent defense costs, continuing juries, providing for these courtrooms on all three islands to not only be open, but for everybody to have access to them. So that involves travel, and then maintenance, just as Magnolia just enumerated some of the items that involves keeping courtrooms open. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and there are other areas also, professional services in addition to court-appointed counsel. We have to think about expert witnesses on DNA. We have to think about psychologists that we need to pay. So where do we go? It just depends. When I see cases, I said, or jury trials, I said, how much do we have to pay all the jurors? How long is this jury trial? Is it 5 days or 2 weeks? So we think, in terms of dollar amount, can the judiciary afford them? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm sure that would make our job much, much harder after hearing all that
Yes.
during our deliberation. But I do agree that it's absolutely necessary. It's just a matter of finding that balance, to try and provide for all the agencies that have come before us and pleaded with us with their needs and requests. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Ms. Sonia?
I just have a quick question. If there is discussions for an amended budget in July, is this body aware what number? Will that number go up? Will it go down? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Right now, they've budgeted a certain amount for personnel, but from what we've noticed with the current submission, whether it be the administration who failed to allocate funds, or maybe it's from the agencies, but MVA wasn't funded in the submission. And MVA is, as you've seen in the past years, they've been getting a significant portion of the budget as well. Yeah, and CHC as well. And so we don't know how the administration will allocate for those agencies when the revised submission comes in. We don't know if it's going to reduce the personnel or operations for all other agencies, or we might see an increase in ARPA allocation that wasn't originally there. But we'll get some clarification from the secretary. He'll, as I've mentioned, he'll be in tomorrow, and so these are some of the questions that we'll bring up with the secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so with that, we'd like to request on record if and when there are discussions on an amended budget that we may be included in those discussions, either through a hearing that you set or through our budget analyst contacting ours. Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Thank you.
We'll reach out. I think I'll close out with just looking at the overall requests of the judiciary of about close to 16 million, including utilities. And with the 6 million that has already been proposed by the administration, which would leave a shortfall of about 10 million. I think one of the main expense that we're seeing that is attributed to that shortfall is the close to 4 million that was proposed for the Tinian courthouse. Yes, and so if we were to take that aside, the 4 million, and we're down to now what's about 6 million. What's the true number of your ARPA allocation? I know some of those funds have already been spoken for other projects, but how much of your ARPA allocations will address some of your personnel and operational needs? And so we can try to reduce that 6 million down and see what that true figure is for us to try to see how we can help fund. If that question makes sense, or should I need to clarify?
It makes sense, but we have to go back to the drawing boards.
Well, well, with the 6 million, well, say we take out the Tinian courthouse of 4 million, which leaves a 6 million shortfall. Of that 6 million, how much in the ARPA allocations for next fiscal year will cover the operation, that 6 million shortfall? Because I know not everything is included to cover the operations and personnel. I know some of that are for other projects. If I heard that correctly earlier. And so how much of the remaining ARPA funds will help supplement the 6 million shortfall, and what's that true number looking like for what the judiciary will need for next fiscal year?
I think realistically, for personnel, we're seeing, like the ARPA administrator mentioned earlier, for FY 2023, we have approximately 1.2 million for personnel, but those are for existing FTEs that are not even on the local spreadsheet.
Okay.
And then the all others, it's hard to say now what that number would be without our procurement numbers coming in for these projects that we have lined up now. We did try to assess, perhaps is the word, how much that annex or added center would cost us. It's a lot of money. It wasn't the initial discussions about what to put out, whether just for mental health or whether for administration or how big the square footage would be. We're getting a lot of high numbers for the cost of construction. And so we just don't know what that number would be and whether it would be enough to supplement our operations under ARPA. Another thing too is we're very careful about what projects we spend these ARPA funds for. We have our general counsel and our deputy general counsel go through DOT guidelines, make sure that everything under our procurement regs align with those guidelines. And so perhaps not everything under our operations can be covered under ARPA, but that's probably cannot be assessed until after these numbers come in on the data center and the behavioral health building.
Okay.
From what we've seen so far, it will probably be eaten up by all that. In fact, Judge Kim Tenorio requested for 2 FTEs for the family court under ARPA. We told her, hold off. We know you have a really huge need, but we're waiting for these numbers to come in on this data center before we can commit to 52 weeks of payroll. PJ Naraha has a request in also to fund FTEs under ARPA for the behavioral science items. And we've also told them, let's hold off. Let's see where the cost for this data center comes in. And we're careful about providing a number for it because it's an item that hasn't been truly bidded. And so that's why I'm sorry I cannot give you a precise number now what's available for FY 2023, because from the looks of our spending plan now, it is all encumbered, except for the 1.2 or 1.3 that's in personnel, because we have contracts that run between now and the end of FY 2023.
Okay, so you're saying that the 9 million or the close to 16 million in requests, that's purely the judiciary's request for local appropriations. Nothing.
Yes.
So none of this 16 million, even the 1.2 million that was set aside would go towards that overall $16 million request.
So I'm not sure where 16 million is coming from, Chairman.
16?
Our request is 15 million. Yeah, and so what we do every year, is we provide to the legislature what we feel the judiciary needs to move forward as a branch. Obviously, revenues don't match it. And so it becomes a priority list for not only the legislature, but also ourselves. And so the 15 million is really what we're saying now is necessary for all three islands to operate its judiciaries properly. Does it mean we should fund the Tinian Courthouse in the next fiscal year? Because that's part of that figure. If you tell us no, then you're the policy decision makers.
Right.
Then we'll say, okay, it's not possible this round. Let's look. In fact, we're looking at other alternate funding sources for that particular project already, because we're also aware that revenues are contingent on COVID going away completely. But yes, the short answer to your question, is this 15 million inclusive of ARPA? No. This is what we constitutionally are mandated to let you know how we feel or what we have assessed to be the needs of the judiciary at this time with its strategic plan and its projected goals for the next fiscal year.
Okay. All right, thank you for clarifying. Well, I wasn't mentioning that we decide on building a Tinian courthouse at another time, but I think that's, when we're trying to figure out how do we continue to allow the court to operate next fiscal year and think about the courthouse at another time or find other sources of funding, whether it be through local appropriations from the delegation or something like that. What's something that we can set aside for now and really focus on the current operations and how we can continue to support that, as well as provide the necessary FTEs in order to support all the different courts and different programs. And so if we're going to come down to a true figure that the members can kind of, it's easier for them to wrap their head around an amount that we can kind of support, and then think about the courthouse through other appropriations at another time. That's something that will help us in making that decision, because as the vice have mentioned, we don't have control over the ARPA, but knowing how much all the other agencies are getting in ARPA could allow us to get some of their local appropriations to fund the judiciary and the legislature, because we've already got the 100% and none from the ARPA for next fiscal year. And so, again, we're going to try to see which local general fund we can get from other agencies in order to try to support the legislature as well as the judiciary, since we don't have access to the ARPA funds in the volume 4 that we see that the governor has submitted. And so
So if I may, two things thank you for what you just said. On the issue of the Tinian Courthouse, we are looking into alternate resources, and Judge Kim Tenorio, who's our chairperson for our federal grants committee. Your Honor, do you want to be the one to share on the USDA loan?
Maybe a little bit premature. We're going through the pre-application process right now to see what we would qualify for and whether it's feasible. But we are looking to USDA. Many years ago, maybe about 7 years ago, Congressman Kilili had expressed his disappointment in how USDA didn't really have someone on the ground here for the CNMI. And so Guam started reaching out to us more. And so we met with them several times, and that's how actually we were able to avail of some of the grants that we have now. The elevator, I think we got some vehicles in the past. We have some other projects that they've helped us with, and so we've reached out to them. There was some change in policy as to the application with the change in administration in DC, but we are still working with them, and we hope that we can fund some of these other projects that we have through the USDA loan. So, but again, we're in the pre-application process now, so I don't want to jump the gun before we know we have some more information from USDA.
Now, setting that aside, if there are funds to be shared because some other agencies will be receiving ARPA amounts, I'm going to toss this number out, and perhaps 10 million works for us. That creates a difference of, we're now at 6, right? Our existing budget is at 6. That means an additional 4 million. But if you want to take it percentage-wise, right now we're at 6%. Both the legislature and the judiciary are at 6% of the budget. But given the growth and the strides that we have taken with the hit on treatment courts and its mandates, 10% would be a logical figure for us. But going back to I hesitate to stray from our submission, because the people of Tinian do need a courthouse, but again, it will depend on what the outcome of the revenue projections will be. And I just want to add on the issue of the USDA loan, if we do head in that direction, there it is on the screen. We've actually procured the lot for it. It's going to be at the Civic Center. We were hoping again to cover this particular item under ARPA, but it was not possible. And so that's why we're seeking alternate funding for it. The population and the needs on Tinian with the military activity have outgrown the current site for the Tinian Courthouse, and COVID measures have required an alternate size. And so we are continuing our talks. We are thankful to the Tinian delegation for meeting with us when they did and providing the property designation our way. And so with that, as Judge KT said, if this doesn't work out at the local level, we're looking to USDA in our discussions. But if those materialize, if that avenue materializes, you may see us back here, because the existing statute may need some tweaking to allow us to go that route. So.
Thank you. Well, with that said, again, we are expecting a revised budget submission by July 1st. And right now, in speaking with the committee members, we're looking at a 7-day window to try to have a finished product out, so that the Senate can also have their time to review the House version of the budget proposal, and to allow the governor enough time to go over the entire budget proposal by the legislature. And so within that 7-day period, if you can make yourself available, and if there are any significant changes to any of the proposal by the administration, will reach out to your team and to try to see how that may or may not affect the judiciary. And so with that, members, if there's no one else, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the members to thank you all for coming today and for sharing the needs. And I recognize.
Yes, Chairman, before we end this session, because I realize there's no more questions, and as much as you've indicated that we're wrapping up, we are here obviously to present our budget. And so I need to give you our best case scenario. And I didn't really want to, the Supreme Court, figuratively the folks upstairs, but in our court, literally the people downstairs, they've worked very hard in putting together this budget. You've probably seen 10% of the slides that we've prepared and the information that we've put through. We went through every scenario, and we said, if the House asks this question, which slide are we jumping to? We prepared everything. So I want to thank them for that, and which is why I really didn't want to interrupt. But Congresswoman Babauta and Magofnia, you both asked us what are our top 3 priorities. And of course, personnel is very important. But I kind of sat here and smiled and looked at the presiding judge because, we're the 2 folks from upstairs, right? And our job is, we're the trial court and they're the appellate court. And so we do different things on a daily basis. So one of the things I was thinking about was I look out here and we're talking about what our priorities are. But we keep talking about building new buildings and stuff like that and all this maintenance. And Gene's probably sitting there saying, hey, I'm still a one-man show with 1 staff. So there's 2 of them right there, right? So he, without a doubt, in his mind, if you asked him, he would say he needs more staff and probably more equipment. Okay. I look at Jim here. He works with me under grants and he's managing all these grants that we have and he has no staff. The marshals, they could probably use another 20 marshals. Just last week, I had a hearing in family court where the litigant threw himself on the ground and wanted to approach the other party. And I was lucky because we have a new marshal who's in training. So he was there with a deputized marshal. So I had 2 marshals and they were able to subdue that person. But I know that we have hearings day in and day out where judges don't have marshals in their courtroom. So if you ask the chief marshal, he would probably say, I need more marshals. So I look out here at everybody and everybody would say they have their own needs and that is their priority. And so for us to sit here and, really just pick and choose what the priorities are, I guess it kind of depends who you ask. And the only last thing I'd like to say is I just want to explain, Justice Manglonia talked about ARPA and the behavioral courts. Behavioral health being mentioned all over the place, and it's true. The shift in the U.S. courts is to treatment. It's not so much punitive anymore, and so we are also following the trend, and we're trying to provide more treatment courts. It's cheaper than incarcerating. Definitely harder work, but it's cheaper. And at the end of the day, we reunify families. We bring children back with their families, parents who have lost their kids to adult kids to drugs, right? So I just want to put things in perspective for everybody and just share with you just one story. And I like to refer to the story of mine as the week of graduations. It's about a participant of mine who just graduated not too long ago after accumulating close to 2 years of sobriety. She started abusing drugs as a teenager. She used for about 20 years before coming into drug court. And I remember on graduation day, she gave probably the rawest speech I've heard from any of my graduates. And she shared how bad she felt for her 22-year-old child who only had the benefit of a mother for the last 2 years. Remember, this child is already an adult. She shared how she neglected her youngest child who suffers from autism, not registering this child for school, not getting any services for the child. She shared how she stole from her kids to buy drugs, and her kids were all present in my courtroom at this graduation. And she shared how DYS was always an unwanted part of her life because she neglected her children, and shared how she would sleep sometimes outside her parents' stairwell because they won't let her in the house because she was abusing drugs and stealing from them as well. And that's just a small glimpse of her life. So when she graduated, she had a home. She got a home through the assistance of the drug court team, a job. She's working now. She has all her children. She has her sobriety, almost 2 years of sobriety. And as she put it on graduation day, drug court saved my life. So why do I call it the week of graduations? So that same week, her autistic child graduated from kindergarten. Her son graduated from high school with top honors and will be attending Rice University this fall with a full ride. And we all know here that Rice University is an Ivy League equivalent university. So please consider our requests and please consider our shift from being punitive to being more therapeutic. Inadequate funding for the judiciary means higher recidivism rates. It's a vicious cycle, catch and release. We're not doing anything to improve. It's continuing to have broken homes, continuing to burden our school systems because these children are neglected and will require extra care from the schools. higher number of cases for DYS, continued drug use, higher crime rates. And then the saddest part, as far as I'm concerned, is the higher number of juvenile cases, because they start out as juvenile criminals, for lack of a better term, and then just transition right into the adult criminal system. And that, I think, is something we would all like to prevent. So I plead with this body to kindly consider our budget. I know that there has to be cuts. That's the reality based on the number, the amount there is to appropriate, but please give us due consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Judge Katie. I think we have a statement from Rep. Camacho.
My apologies for missing the practically the whole hearing, but I'm in support of everything the judiciary is asking for. They are a real key to our government. Not that the other agencies aren't important, but if you look around, I mean, there's a lot going on, and it seems like the judiciary is always the first one to get all these problems. They can't do their work if they're not adequate. That's all I care about. I support everything that you ask for in full, and I hope our committee, Ways and Means, would also see that, and will fight for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Camacho. And yeah, just to add on to that, I think one of the challenges that we've had in the last deliberation was to try to get to the number that the judiciary had asked for last budget season. And so that's the challenge that we're faced with again today. Because as you know, the executive branch has access to ARPA, the legislative branch has access to the general fund, as well as all these other local appropriations. But there seems to be a neglect with the court sometimes, in the sense that as much as we want to try to help all agencies, we don't see much of the local appropriations also going to assist the judiciary. And it's also it's something that maybe anyone from the judiciary can seek, is through the local delegations, and how we, as a member of each senatorial district, how can we assist the judiciary in these respective islands. And so after come July 1st, I hope to have all the members present, and we'll connect with Ms. Sonia and reach out to the judiciary to see how we can assist the judiciary with the changes that we may see in the governor's revised submission. And so again, with that, I just want to thank you all for coming out today, as well as bringing all the staff from the judiciary. It truly helps to see all the faces, as well as hear the needs of the judiciary. And so with that, if any member of the bench would like to say anything in closing, the floor is open.
Thank you. I think the Judge KT made an effective closing arguments. I mean, and her statements embody what the work is of the judiciary, the day to day, and also the accomplishments. And we started out with listing all the accomplishments that we've done, but I think it's not the accomplishments of facility or technology, it's the accomplishments of drug court and mental health court. And what more can we, that makes us really, we're glad to hear about this accomplishment at drug court, where this one participant is able to graduate and have her children graduate from high school and preschool. So that's the embodiment of what the judiciary stands for to make sure that we operate in a healthy and safe society. So thank you so much to everyone, to the chairman, the vice chairman, and all the members here for listening to us. And I hope that you are happy with our presentation. And of course, we're willing, our staff is ready to answer any questions that you may have as you deliberate in the next few weeks. It's a difficult job for you folks. We fully understand. Okay.
Thank you, Justice Maloney. Recognize Ms. Camacho.
I just would like to thank two of our staffers who have been sitting patiently up there working the slides for us, Mary Glass and Josie Estrada, and also to the managers that are sitting behind us and all of the employees of the judiciary. What you see on these slides and the information we bring to you is from their efforts. And our members of the bench, justice cannot be dispensed with all aid. So thank you all. And Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for your continuing discussions with us and allowing us to see where government revenues are and how we can fit into those discussions. It's truly appreciated. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Camacho. At this time, we'll excuse the judiciary and we'll take a few minutes recess. Thanks. Short recess. miscellaneous. Tomorrow we have two entities up for budget hearing. We have MVA and Department of Finance. MVA will be at 10. Department of Finance will be at 1. And then we have we're still in recess from yesterday's meeting for tomorrow at 9 a.m. So please come in at 9. And Rep. Sablan, you have something to report tomorrow at 9?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we will.
Okay, so we'll reconvene yesterday's meeting at 9 tomorrow. And then we only have an hour window, so we may or may not be acting on 22-102, and so please be prepared for that. Otherwise, we have again 10 a.m. MBA, 1 p.m. Department of Finance. Any other announcements? I recognize Rep. Bangtamay.
Just a reminder to all members of the Committee on Commerce and Tourism, and what's the other one? Oh, okay. Okay, about tonight, natural resources, yeah. About tonight at 5:30 or this afternoon, 5:30 at the Carolinian Ut, we will have a public hearing on the village delimitation. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Bangtamay. Any other member? Okay, next item on the agenda is adjournment. Can I get a motion? All right, motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Meeting is hereby adjourned at 3:29 p.m.